Yes, no, it's just to speak to you from the heart and from the best of my recollection. And those four things are these. Number one, what happened? What are we talking about here? What is at the heart of the AWU Wilson scandal? The second thing is, the second issue I want to address is, how can somebody so compromised, so clearly compromised and knowingly compromised as Julia Gillard rise to the position that she currently occupies when so many people in her own movement knew of the facts that compromised her? How can that be? The third point I want to talk about this evening is the ease with which Ms. Gillard was able to close down reportage of an issue that had no bearing on any policy matter. It had no conceivable nexus between it, the issue, and anything to do with the nation's interests or national security, the development of the country. It had nothing to do with any of that. It simply had to do with the most distasteful episode in her past. And I think that third point, the ease with which she was able to completely hose down inquiry and reportage, to enlist the services of many in the media to discredit those who would try to talk about it, that's terribly, terribly disturbing in a genuine democracy. And the fourth thing, if time permits, I would like to talk a little about the role of the blogosphere, of the internet, and how that makes things different, and how important it is, but similarly how potentially problematic it is if half-truths and what have you are being mixed with the truth and peddled around. It in fact does the services of truth a great disservice. So first up to what happened. In about 1991, allow me to provide a little caveat. I will speak on the basis of things that I know to my own standard of proof to be true. And the source for the bulk of what I have to tell you is various affidavits and exhibits to affidavits that have been filed in various court proceedings. The Western Australian Police Force Fraud Squad investigation into certain allegations against Mr. Wilson, Mr. Blewitt, and those who assisted them. And probably now hundreds of hours of interviews that I have conducted with various of the parties who are, or parties to this matter, including Bruce Wilson, who I speak with probably daily now. And, well, let me just say, I make no bones about the nature of my inquiries, and I point out to him whenever I appear, in the media, my attitude to the crimes that I believe he committed. I speak to him as I would have spoken to any crook when I was a policeman at Collingwood in Port Melbourne. And that is in these terms, that I don't respect the crimes of which you stand accused, but I respect you as a person. And my message to Bruce is this, that henceforth he has two paths which his life may take. One of them involves the potential for a knock at the door at a time not of his choosing, and the prospect of him being extradited to Melbourne and potentially Perth to face the law in those jurisdictions. He lives in coastal New South Wales. He has a 6-month-old, and the very real prospect, should the state's inquiries lead to the framing of charges and a conviction, he faces the very real prospect of significant jail time, because the amounts of money that we're talking about here are in the several hundreds of thousands of dollars. His position was one of authority and responsibility. If it is true, if the matters alleged against him are proven beyond reasonable doubt in a court of competent jurisdiction, he's facing serious jail time. Now that's one path, and he'd have to mount a defence if he chose. The other path for him is to assist the state in its inquiries, to make early and complete admissions, to unburden himself of what he is carrying, and to do so in the belief that he would be likely to attract for himself a significant discount on any punishment that may await him. And in fact, the potential for a suspended jail sentence is within, I'm told, the scope, the range of potential remedies the state might apply to him. What would you do? That's the question that's exercising his mind at present. So I'll leave that. The four things I want to speak about, the first of them was what happened. In 1991, Ms Gillard was an industrial lawyer. Bruce Wilson was a senior official in the Australian Workers' Union. He had been on a joint ticket for his potential position he was seeking to be elected for was as the Secretary of the Union nationally. The other person on that joint ticket with him was a fellow called Bill Ludwig. Bill Ludwig had been the president. Ludwig and Wilson were very close. Confirmed as late as yesterday to me. They'd stay in hotel rooms together, eat together. Bill, anyone here ever met Bill? He's an old shearer, old Queensland shearer, well into his 70s. Nothing happens in the Labor Party without Bill's imprimatur. It's noteworthy that the boss of the AWU, the Australian Workers' Union, Paul Howes, it was Paul Howes who made the announcement on the night of the Long Knives when Kev was rolled that Julia was installed. Nothing happens in the Labor Party without Bill's imprimatur. Bruce said to me last night, he said, you know, Smithy, he said, Bill always said to me, he said, mate, if you tie yourself to the shit carter's trailer, don't be surprised when it rolls over and you get a spray. The trick is, don't tie yourself to the shit carter's trailer. And Bruce has gone, geez, I wish I'd listened closer. Bruce Wilson was a mate of Bill Ludwig's. Bill installed Bruce in a number of positions. In 91 he met this industrial lawyer and they fancied each other. For the mental imagery I have just caused you to endure, sorry. Bruce said to me last night, he said, you know, I've just finished a bottle of wine while I've been talking to you. Katarina must have heard me say words to that effect, because she walked past and said, geez, Bruce, you bloody need it, what you were doing. We're all human up here, even crooks. I got on well with some crooks. Chopper Reed was one. Anyway. He met Miss Gillard 91 and they commenced a relationship. I'll talk later about salacious comment and inappropriate comment, and I have a great disdain for it. There is one thing I would say that I think is moderately relevant without verging too far into the personal, and that is that Bruce was a married man with children at home at this time. They commenced their relationship and both of them describe it as a romantic one where they believed that there was a future. It continued for about 4 years or so. He stated that he was going to come over to Melbourne, and at about that time he became aware of a very large building project, sort of like a mini Suez Canal in the west in Perth. They were building or re-channeling a river. It's a big thing, a very big project. Significant numbers of workers would have been employed on it, large numbers of AWU workers, and Tees was the contractor. This was in the 1990s, about the time, you may recall, training guarantee funds, and you could reduce your tax bill if you had money going into certain activities. Tees was aware that it had some of these funds that had to be expended. They were government funds, there's no doubt about that. I think it is relevant to keep in the back of your mind that a senior manager in Tees was Wilson's brother-in-law, married to his sister. That becomes important when the WA Police and the Crown Prosecutor seek a complainant in the end to ultimately sign a complaint and a statement in relation to the ownership of the several $100,000 that we're going to talk about today. In any case, Thompson and his accomplice, Ralph Blewitt, approached the Commissioner for Corporate Affairs in Western Australia and asked him, unsuccessfully, they asked him to incorporate what they claimed was an association that they represented. And there's a few legal notions here to familiarise yourself with. When you say incorporate, the corpus of the body, make it into a legal body, a legal entity that can sue and be sued, can open bank accounts and what have you. The WA Associations Incorporation Act is quite clear and quite specific about the purpose for which the law affords the opportunity for 5 or more people to incorporate an association. The reporting requirements are less burdensome than they are for other sorts of corporate entities, the title and paperwork. And it's clearly designed, when you read the Act, it is clearly designed to encourage community good for arts organisations and, kids, sporting clubs and things of that ilk. The Act is crystal clear in what it precludes. For example, a trade union cannot be, it's an explicit exclusion, cannot be incorporated under the provisions of that Act. Similarly, the Act is quite specific in saying this: if your intention is to engage in an activity for pecuniary profit, to trade, to issue invoices, to do work and what have you, then you cannot incorporate under the Associations Act. And it says you must have 5 people. 5 people get together, they become an association, the law will recognise them if there's a minimum of 5, and if they meet the other requirements, and allow them to incorporate, to create a body separate from them. They're members, but it's separate from them. So Wilson, with the avowed intention of setting up an entity separate from the union that could bill Tees for some of this money, the training guarantee money, Wilson went to the Corporate Affairs Commissioner of his own bat, filed an application, and the Commissioner said, "You're joking. You're kidding." So Wilson's next step was to get on a plane with his accomplice Ralph Blewitt and fly to Melbourne. And there he met with his girlfriend, who was a partner in the practice of industrial law, a partner in a firm, in her 30s, whose life work to that point had been the conduct of industrial law, who was well acquainted with the rules of unions, and who became clearly acquainted with the legislation that provides for the incorporation of associations in Western Australia. And I say that because I now have in my possession the application that bears her handwriting to the Corporate Affairs Commissioner in Western Australia. And the objects, she called them, of the sham association that didn't exist, that didn't, for example, have the requisite 5 members, it had 2, Wilson and Blewitt. From the very start, it was crystal clear that this enterprise was a sham. It was not what it purported to be. It was something different. I have the police file, and it is crystal clear. In correspondence between the detective McAlpine of the fraud squad in Perth and a judge, his Honour Judge Ron Madgwick of the erstwhile Industrial Relations Court, it's now Fair Work Australia, where the detective saw from the judge exhibits that were produced in 1996 to substantiate the detective's case against these 2 crooks, as he described them. The detective wrote, "Your Honour, no one else in the union knew about this. It was conducted through a private post office box secured by Wilson and Blewitt." Now, I infer from that correspondence that had Miss Gillard at that time been truthful in her assertion that she did nothing wrong, she would have sent a bill to the union for her work. And the window envelope would have turned up at accounts payable at the Australian Workers' Union, and they would have gone, "What's this? Bruce, come in." That never happened. It didn't happen. We now know, thanks to the diligent investigation by the firm of the malfeasance alleged against his partner, Miss Gillard. And I'm speaking there of the detailed record of interview conducted by the partner, Nick Stein-Brown, and another, as yet publicly unnamed, member of the firm's partnership. We now know that Miss Gillard told that investigation that what in fact she was registering was a re-election slush fund. That's what she called it, a slush fund. That's not what she told the WA Corporate Affairs Commissioner. She told him, in the certificate that bears her handwriting, she told him something vastly different. I have the two pieces of paper that bear Miss Gillard's handwriting. Keep in mind, Wilson had unsuccessfully tried to register this association. He went to his lawyer girlfriend, who didn't open a file at work, who didn't bill, who exposed her partners to significant potential jeopardy by not opening a file and informing them fully of what she was up to. This form says, it's crystal clear, the association is formed for the purpose of development of changes to work to achieve safe workplaces. The rules of the association, so as to satisfy the Corporate Affairs Commissioner, are required to include a further provision, and the rules of this association did. And that further provision is this, that no part of the property or income of the association may be distributed directly or indirectly to members of the association. If your intention is to conduct trade, to send out invoices, to do work, to employ people, to create a pecuniary profit, it's crystal clear that you would have a proprietary limited company, limited by shares, limited by guarantee, limited by some other form of protection, or you would create a partnership or a trust or a unit trust. There's a range of structures that might better suit themselves if that was your intention. Clearly, it was Wilson's intention. It was Wilson's stated intention that he proposed to send out invoices, and he did. So within months it struck me as peculiar beyond belief that Miss Gillard would attend a house auction with her boyfriend in Melbourne, that she would see him make the successful bid, that she would then take instructions from him in the purchase of that house, and that her partnership would write to Wilson and his offsider and say, on settlement day, you will need to furnish us a bank cheque in the amount of $67,770 odd. Well, the cheque was forthcoming, but it wasn't a bank cheque. It was a cheque, a copy of which I have in my possession. It was a cheque drawn on that account. It said on the bottom, draw AWU Workplace Reform Association. So when current Commissioner of Fair Work Australia, Ian Cambridge, said, what have I done here? Oh, thank you. Said, I am unable, in his affidavit, he swore, I'm unable to understand how Slater and Gordon could have acted for this pair in their purchase of real property, of real estate, knowing the funds were taken from the union, without at the very least recording the union's interest in the property. I can't understand that either. Now, this is an eminent jurist, a man of some distinction, Ian Cambridge, an honourable man, a man who acted at some peril early on to bring to the attention of the Federal Industrial Relations Minister the corruption within his own union. He in fact called for a Royal Commission into what had gone on in his union, unsuccessfully. He was assisted in drafting the paperwork for that would form the basis of that Royal Commission by the immediate past Attorney General, another fine man, a sedate and sober, eminently successful Attorney General, Robert McClelland. replaced by, God help us. So within weeks of advising the Corporate Affairs Commissioner that this entity had been established to develop changes to work to achieve safe workplaces, within weeks of drafting the rules, acquainting herself with the legislation, then drafting the rules to meet the requirements on paper of the legislation, and knowing that said you can't distribute property or income to members, money comes out of it, $90,000 to buy a house for her boyfriend. And if you accept her proposition that she was deceived by a criminal mastermind, why on earth would he go to her firm to have her act in the conveyancing if he was trying to conceal it from her? In fact, I look at it this way. She says that she was the young and naive party deceived by one of this pair is flipping burgers up the coast, and the other has manoeuvred her position in life. She's the Prime Minister. I mean, who was the mastermind genius here? That house was purchased in early 1993, and Wilson went on in various union roles throughout 1993, 1994, throughout half of 1995. Now, many of you will know that I interviewed Craig Thompson and elicited from him an admission that he, Thompson, when the bill came in for the brothels, he, Thompson, authorised the payment of those accounts, those credit card accounts, using union money. And just, incidentally, I wrote to the Prime Minister at that time and said, "Ma'am, now knowing of this man's admission that he used funds extracted from the poorest workers amongst us for this purpose, does he retain your confidence? He's doing a fine job and I expect him to be around for a long time." It's disgraceful. I'm embarrassed. I truly am. I am embarrassed. Beyond my capacity to endure it, I am embarrassed to even say those words. I can't believe we've come to that. I mean, fairly... What the... Honestly, can you believe this? This prick has got his hand in their pocket. And I've been in hospital. I've had a number of operations. I remember the joy of seeing Mum sat on the bus from Sydney when I was in the police. I got a pretty bad injury to my leg, and I'm the oldest of 6. And how old was Ben, Mum? He would have been 4. Mum caught the bus down from Sydney with all 5 of the other children. Ben, the littlest, was 4. Sat up on the bus to come down to the police hospital, which was part of St Henry's, I think. Yeah, it is St Henry's in Melbourne. And I used to see those ladies come into the hospital in their purple dress in the morning. One particular Yugoslav lady always stays in my mind. She talked about she worked for the children, so they go to the university, so they have the good job, not like me. I come here, I don't want them to have this like this work, And I can never forget that. I'll never forget that lady and how she'd be able to have us 5 in the morning to catch the bus and put her purple dress on and the white shoes. Always looked immaculate and came in and worked in the furnace in the bloody bowels of the hospital. How can a bastard be so up himself that he just thinks that's all right? She paid today's money is $600 a year. The dues in that union are phenomenal in the health service. And I digress, I know, I'm going into Thompson. But it is an insight into the calibre of the person in the office of Prime Minister that she was so immediately able to render like a reference for that bloke. He's a great bloke, he's doing a good job. Man, he's just admitted that he exercised such poor judgment, such an absence of diligence, that he freaking signed off not once but several times. Anyway, when I go through Thompson's stuff, you'd see ATM withdrawals, and they started off as furtive. They start off as $100 every few days, and then he's got the thing in at the end of the month again. Well, he was signing it off himself. He's got away. How good's this? So the next it's 500. And it turned out it was $500, $800 every few days coming out of the ATM with Thompson. Bruce was the same. Bruce Morton Wilson was the same. Let me give you a little of the calibre of the sort of bloke. He'd write to Ansett if he didn't get 1A on the Perth-Melbourne flight.
Yeah, you got the idea, right? So, he used this account clearly as a slush fund because there's thousands coming out of it every few days. 8,000, always under the reportable transactions, under 10, except for one large $50,000